Hi everyone. There's I was going to say another anti-Semitic smear in the British media about Jeremy Corbyn then, but it's not another one. It's just a continuation of the first one that started when he was elected in 2015, because it hasn't stopped. It just hasn't stopped. Every week, every day, there's a new article about it in the media, despite the fact that we'll come to it. We'll come to it. I'll cover this. It started, this latest one did, with this in the Daily Mail now. This is not the first time this story has actually made the media. That's the strange thing. It happened 10 days before the general election, from what I can tell. First time this came up, but they're now rehashing old anti-Semitic smears. So there's a little bit more information come out about this last smear. This is why they've rehashed it, but still, it's just, we'll come to it. It was from the Daily Mail, which I consider to be, and many people consider to be, the worst media outlet in the country by far. It's bigoted. It's full of factual inaccuracies, and I find it hilarious that the Daily Mail can accuse anybody else of being anti-Semitic or racist given their history of racism. So it said, Corbyn's wreath at graves of Munich terrorists, photos that show Labour leader at tribute to Palestine martyrs, including plotters behind 1972 slaughter of Israeli Olympic athletes. So they're saying he's laid a wreath at the grave of a terrorist. He's anti-Semitic. He's a terrorist sympathiser. That's what the Daily Mail say. Here's Jeremy Corbyn's response. He's responded, and the Independent have covered this morning. Jeremy Corbyn admits being present at that wreath laying for Munich terrorists, but says, I don't think I was actually involved in it. It goes back to 2014 this happened, before he was Labour leader. This is what he said in that video. I'm just going to play this video so you can get it from the horse's mouth rather than hear me drone on.
A wreath was indeed laid by some of those who attended the conference of those that were killed in Paris in 1992.
Were you involved in that wreath laying?
I was present when it was laid. I don't think I was actually involved in it. I was there because I wanted to see a fitting memorial to everyone who's died in every terrorist incident everywhere, because we have to end it. You cannot pursue peace by a cycle of violence. The only way you pursue peace is a cycle of dialogue.
Now, his stance on this has been that for the last 30, 40 years. If you remember back in the election in last year, in 2017, they were all calling him a terrorist sympathiser. Do you remember? They were bringing up photos of him meeting with Jerry Adams, calling him a terrorist sympathiser because, hey, he supported the NRA, the IRA. I nearly said NRA then. That's untrue. He wanted a dialogue with the IRA to end the atrocities, to end the violence. That's what he wanted. And his stance has been absolutely the same for decades on this. Dialogue helps. Bombing doesn't. Happens to be my sense too. It's one of the reasons why I gravitate towards Corbyn. I'm not going to read the article. That's basically just outlining exactly what I've just told you and what he said in that video. But this comes on the back, remember, of not just 3 years of just smears attempts against Jeremy Corbyn, but before I get to this, I just want to explain something to you. Just in case you haven't seen my videos before. They never attack him on policies, do they? They never attack him on policy. In fact, I saw a stat. It was in a meme, so I don't know whether the stat is true or accurate, but it seems accurate to me. It was in a meme that said only 11% of all articles written about Jeremy Corbyn in the mainstream press in the UK actually talk about his policies. Only 11%. So it's 1 in every 10. So you can imagine 80-90%, they're just smear jobs on it. There's never anything good about him in the media in this country. It's just smear jobs. So only 11%. And I suggest that was probably when the media have restrictions on them in the run-up to an election. I don't know that for sure. But what I do know is they rarely talk about his policies. Rarely. It's always smearing. In that statistic, I also found that the Daily Mirror, and I think it was the Daily Express, never talk about his policies. Never, ever. They just smear him. Give us some idea as to how slanted the media are towards Jeremy Corbyn. And obviously, I'm just going to run over a few things that have happened this year. I've catalogued these in videos this year. Obviously, the BBC tried to paint him out as being some Rusky and photoshopped certainly the contrast to make him more Russian in the photo. They denied it, of course. He was called Putin's puppet because he wanted to wait for evidence before we immediately blamed Russia for poisoning the Skripals. He was called Putin's puppet and a Kremlin asset and all those things with regards to it. And look what happened since. Have we seen any evidence that it was Russia? Does anybody believe the government narrative, especially if you've watched any of my videos, which points out way more facts than the BBC have? Me, on my own, doing a YouTube show from my front room. Anyway, he was called Corbyn the Collaborator, if you remember, a few months back, when reports of a Czech spy saying some outrageous stuff that everybody laughed at and thought was hilarious, apart from the Daily Mail and others, which took it serious. Now, he responded to those allegations at the time, and I found this video out, and I want to share it simply because he said something else in response to these allegations that he was some sort of Czech spy. Take a listen.
In the last few days, the Sun, the Mail, the Telegraph, the Express have all gone a little bit James Bond. They've found a former Czechoslovakian spy whose claims are increasingly wild and entirely false. He seems to believe I kept him informed about what Margaret Thatcher had for breakfast and says he was responsible for either Live Aid or the Mandela concert, or maybe both. It's easy to laugh, but something more serious is happening. Publishing these ridiculous smears that have been refuted by Czech officials shows just how worried the media bosses are by the prospect of a Labour government. They're right to be. Labour will stand up to the powerful and corrupt and take the side of the many, not the few. A free press is essential for democracy, and we don't want to close it down, we want to open it up.
Now, people like me rejoice in that sort of statement being made by the opposition in this country because we're fed up with the media. And people like me, obviously, I would hopefully benefit from any opening up of the media. What we want, more than anything from what I can tell, is somewhere to have a level playing field with the mainstream media. Somewhere that people can go to and just pick their news. You know, it can be false if you want. People continue to say false things, fine, you know, sue them. But people should be allowed to go to a place and get their media from somewhere. This is a different issue. But he said in that video, there's a more serious thing going on here. And I'll get to that in a bit, but I just want to cover the rest of these because of what's happened recently with the anti-Semitic smear against Jeremy Corbyn. A month ago, Labour MP Margaret Hodge turned on Jeremy Corbyn, calling him an effing racist and anti-Semite to his face. She faced no, didn't have any consequences for that as far as I can tell. And then there was just a few weeks ago where Labour MPs were reported as meeting in a country retreat somewhere, the Blairite MPs, in some secret plot to oust him. And then the Jewish Chronicle, the Jewish Telegraph and the Jewish News all come out and support United We Stand, and this was against Jeremy Corbyn. They're saying he's a threat. You know what? They're right. He is a threat. He's not an anti-Semite. He's a threat to a right-wing Israeli government that's committing war crimes against Palestinians in Gaza and Israel. That's what Gaza and West Bank, rather. That's what we're standing up for. I get called an anti-Semite too, all the time. It's what they do. It's their only defence for what they do. Is to say, oh, you're being anti-Semitic. Yeah, but you just killed some kids. You just killed 50 people, 50 protesters, including medics and journalists. What have you got to say for yourself? You're anti-Semitic! That's what they do. Just look at my reports. Now, I want to highlight this just simply. I haven't talked much about Caitlin Johnson on my videos, but she is, I believe, the best political writer in the world right now. And one of the reasons why I think she's that is because the mainstream media hate her. So she must be doing something right. She wrote in this article, I'll leave a link to it down below. If you don't read Caitlin Johnson, trust me, she writes almost every day. Just go at least once a week to her Medium or her site and read her stuff. Take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, read it on the toilet. She's so good. She's so good, I stopped writing. I haven't written anything since I got interested in Caitlin Johnson, simply because I could never be half as good as her. So I leave her to do the writing now, and I do the videos. But she said this in one of the recent articles that she wrote. One of the weirdest things about the post-Iraq invasion world is how the mass media has actually gotten less accountable instead of more accountable for its reporting since that time. Now, do you remember? They were the ones who said Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. They were the ones who just went along with the government lies. They were the ones, I think Washington editorial board came out and saying, after Colin Powell said that at the meeting, there's no refuting that Iraq has WMDs. It was just nonsense. And since then, they've got less accountable since. How did that happen? She went on. It goes on to write, right now in the UK, this is directly about the Jeremy Corbyn situation. Right now in the UK, there's an amazingly viral smear campaign against Jeremy Corbyn running across all mainstream outlets, which, from what I can tell, consist entirely of narrative spin and no actual evidence. The powerful elites who control British mass media have an obvious vested interest in keeping the UK government from moving to the left, so they advance the absolutely insane narrative that Corbyn is a secret Nazi. They just keep saying it like it's true until people start believing it without feeling any pressure at all to substantiate their narrative with facts. It's been jaw-dropping to watch. It has. Not surprising though. She's still watching all, but it's not surprising. And I want to point that out at the bottom there. That's from Aaron Matte. That tweet is at the bottom. The UK campaign to smear Jeremy Corbyn as anti-Semitic follows old playbook versus those who defend Palestinian rights, amplified by neoliberals who also hate JC's progressive agenda. Sorry to pull this card, but as a Jew and descendant of Holocaust victims, it's embarrassing and disgraceful. I am seeing and hearing more and more Jewish people coming out and say sentiments almost exactly the same as Aaron Matte has said there. And I want to also, from that article, point out this from Katars. This was said in a tweet as well at the top. All of the suspicious behaviours of the mass media can be understood by considering the fact that the mass media outlets are controlled by a few powerful elites who are acutely aware that they are vastly, dangerously outnumbered by the general population that they exploit every single day. That's why I stopped writing, because she just did in a tweet, which would take me about 10 chapters to talk about. That's what it is. This is a smear campaign. Now, whether he's left a wreath at the grave, it's immaterial. They probably left wreaths at graves of many people. Was he involved in it? I don't know. If he was, did he realise that the guy was a terrorist that was laying the wreath? I don't know. We don't even know whether he actually did what he's being accused of here, let alone the backstory of it. But obviously that doesn't stop the press jumping the gun once again. Narrative spin without evidence, as Caitlin says. Now, just in case you're still like, no, he's an anti-Semite, listen, you don't understand the power the Jewish lobby, not the Jewish lobby, that's wrong. Take that back. The Israeli lobby has over, and Israel, the Israeli right-wing government, has over the British media. Just an example, I brought this up the other day. This was when rockets were sent to Gaza and killed a pregnant woman and a toddler. And it was in response to rockets that were sent from Hamas, which, from what I could tell, were about the size of fireworks. Regardless, this is what the BBC's headline was: Israeli airstrikes kill woman and toddler, in quotes. That actually, the only thing wrong about that is it should say kill pregnant woman and toddler, and the toddler was 18 months old. But look what happened. A reporter notes Israel's Foreign Office has issued a formal complaint to the BBC World after their Gaza headline, and minutes later, I'm kidding, it was super fast this happened, Gaza airstrikes kill woman and child after rockets hit Israel. Wait, so Gaza have launched airstrikes and they've killed a woman and child after those rockets hit Israel? So the woman and child was in Israel? It makes no sense, that headline does. It's totally misleading. They have made the BBC change a headline which is accurate and truthful to something totally misleading, just with one single complaint. That's the BBC. Can you imagine how much sway the Israeli government and neoliberals who are on board with what they're doing because they're scared of what JC will do to them? Can you imagine what the neoliberals who own the British media at large, can you imagine how they're influenced by money coming in from Israel? We know how much Israel and Israeli money and the Israeli lobby affects and molds American politics. It's happening here too. You'd have to be blind not to see it. Now, there is a bit of what I found sort of a light at the end of the tunnel here, because I am constantly afraid that the British people are going to swallow this. Constantly. I'm constantly afraid that it's going to work, and eventually they're going to sway public opinion. But what I actually think is it's going the other way and nobody's buying it. And this was yesterday. This was in Cornwall, I believe, at a silent rave. Just listen for a few seconds. 18,000 people there were there. 18,000 people. So it might not be having an effect. It doesn't look like it's having an effect, obviously, if that crowd's got anything to go by. But it still is worrying that it might. We'll see. I've got to have faith in the British public that they can see straight through this. I really have. They certainly seen through the Skripal affair. They certainly saw through the Syria bombing. By the way, again, think about it. Jeremy Corbyn was the one who actually called for restraint then, and he was labelled a Putin puppet. And look what's happened. I've shown you evidence to say that there was actually no gas attack that took place. OPCW has come out and said there was no sarin found there. So there was nothing there that the American government, remember, called it a sarin gas attack. OPCW said, nope, not sarin. We found some chlorine and we're checking on that, but chlorine can be found everywhere, anywhere. What did the BBC come out with a title saying, chlorine gas used? They had to change that because it was misleading. What Caitlin Johnson said there in that article, and that's why I've pointed to it, I think is absolutely 100% correct. And what Jeremy Corbyn said in response to those smears of him being a Czech spy is absolutely correct. The media in this country are petrified, terrified that he will become Prime Minister. Because if he gets in, and he gets in with a majority, and the Blairites and his party are either ejected out of the party with deselection, which could happen in the next few months if that vote passes, I think it's in September, they could be gone very soon. Or if he gets a majority where the Blairites and his party doesn't matter what they do, because even if they side with the Tories, it won't make a difference to the count. If that happens, the establishment and the neoliberal agenda in this country, they are under serious attack. It could kill neoliberalism in this country. I suggest it already is on his last legs. Get rid of the Blairites in the Labour Party, and it's finished. Maybe then, if that happens, I'll actually support Labour, but I doubt it. I do like Jeremy Corbyn, though. I've got something in common with him. I too get labelled as anti-Semitic for standing up for Palestinian rights. As far as I can tell, that's exactly what is going on here. And the media and the British government and the BBC especially should be ashamed of themselves. And I hope the British public can see this for what it is. An obvious, a blatant smear job, because they're petrified if he gets into power, their power is going to be diminished. If you enjoyed this video, please click the bell down there and subscribe so you get a notification of next time I drop a video. Also, I can't do this without your help, so if you can afford it and you enjoy my videos, please support the channel by subscribing to my Patreon. Link is down there. You can do it for as little as $1 a month, and it really does help. If you can't afford it, that's fine. Please share my work and talk to other people about the issues that I bring up. Thanks very much for your support. Until next time, peace and take care.